Good afternoon. You're watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos. Let's take a look at how the local bourse closed today, Friday. All right, shares were traversing the 7,000 level smoothly all throughout the session, but a last-minute profit-taking pulled shares back down to earth. Trading week ends on a low note. They're down 0.6% to 6,906. That's coming from a high of 7,076 today. This comes even as the government gives a go signal for looser travel curbs for minors and vaccinated senior citizens. More details on that development later, but that news did little to sustain the rally in the earlier part of the session. The index week to date so far is down by 0.25%. Let's head on over this time to two stocks that we have been watching closely the past sessions. I'm referring to Converge and First Gen, both of which have been dumped heavily recently for different reasons here, but diverting paths today for both stocks as First Gen finally pulls off a rally ahead of its exit from the main bourse on Monday. First Gen in this chart right here, represented by the orange line. As you can see on the tail end of this chart, you'd see FGen at least pulling off rally today. That's after its public float was reduced due to the completion of KRR's tender offer, resulting, of course, in its exit in the main bourse. That's going to commence by October 11. It finally snapped out of its two-day decline, capping its last day in the main gauge as the best performer, up 5.1% to 29 pesos a piece. Unlike FGen, though, Converge still being dumped here, as you can see, represented by the white line in this chart. The stock today has lost 10.4%. The session's worst performing stock extended it for a second day after its Wednesday rally pushed 14-day RSI to overbought levels owing to its inclusion to the FTSE ASEAN Star Index. Converge so far over the past two sessions down by 23.6%. Converge the week at 33 pesos and 60 centavos a share. Now, heading over to some of our leaders and laggards for the day here. Banks having a fee record gains after the BSP remains cautiously optimistic at that the easing of restrictions will help boost bank lending growth owing to more business activity. Ayala Land and Mega World also in the positive territories you can see here. It's after the SEC cleared the two property play in one or more tranches. On offer will be 2.75 billion pesos worth of debt papers with an option to sell more. That's depending on demand. That overallotment option will bring revenue to 5.4 billion pesos. As for Mega World, that would be for the sale of 30 million Series 4 preferred shares with oversubscription of as much as 10 million shares priced at 100 pesos a share. That's going to raise 3.9 billion pesos. The SEC, of course, also greenlit two more public offerings, one from Synergy Grid and another from the Keepers Holdings. Today is the day for filing of certificates of candidacy for the 2022 elections, and among last-minute filers is Senator Kiko Pangilinan, who is running for vice president. Pangilinan was accompanied by his running mate and presidential aspirant, Vice President Lenny Robredo. Like who's running as an independent candidate, Pangilinan will remain under the Liberal Party. Meanwhile, detained Senator Laila de Lima filed for re-election through a representative. Former Senator Antonio Trillanes is also seeking a Senate comeback. Re-electionist Sherwin Gatchalian has also filed his COC senator under the Nationalist People's Coalition that's headed by presidential hopeful Ping Lacson. Also under Lacson senatorial slate is former Agriculture Secretary Manny Piñol. Broadcaster and former Vice President Noli De Castro filed his COC for senator under the party of Isko Moreno. De Castro is eyeing a return to politics after an 11-year hiatus. Presidential legal counsel Salvador Panelo has also filed a COC for senator. Former Ifugao Congressman Gilat will nominee for NORA party list, or the National Organization for responsive advocacies for the arts. Meanwhile, supporters of Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte were spotted near the Sofitel Hotel to call on the presidential daughter to reconsider her decision not to run for president. But in a statement, Sara reiterated her decision to run again as mayor of her city for third and final term. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The government has shortened the quarantine period for fully vaccinated inbound passengers from green or yellow list countries. Effective today, inbound travelers who have been fully vaccinated only need undergo facility-based quarantine for 5 days. They should expect to receive their test results on the fifth and final day, and if they turn out negative for the virus, they will be allowed to return to their homes where they will complete their 10-day quarantine. Meanwhile, unvaccinated or partially vaccinated travelers are required to stay in the quarantine facility for 7 days. They will then undergo home quarantine until the 14th day from their arrival. The IATF has also approved interzonal travel for minors below 18 years old, fully vaccinated seniors aged 65 and above, pregnant women, and persons with comorbidities. The mentioned sectors are now allowed to travel point to point to areas under general community quarantine and MGCQ. The Finance Department is expecting the trade sector to sustain its recovery for the rest of the year. Finance Undersecretary and Chief Economist Gil Beltran said trade would benefit from efforts to boost the vaccination program. But he notes that the government must continue monitoring the spread of the Delta variant, as this could persist, which in turn could affect the resumption of trade activities. The Development of Budget Coordination Committee expects exports to improve by 10% this year as a result of base effects from last year and the rebound of trading partners like Japan and the United States. Imports are meanwhile expected to rise by 12% as countries lift their business restrictions and domestic demand begins to bounce back. The Bangko Sentral has upheld its order directing home-based social media platform LYKA to cease operations as an operator of payment systems or OPS. This comes after the BSP denied the request of LYKA's Philippine partner, Digital Spring Marketing, to be registered as an OPS on behalf of LYKA. The cease and desist order against LYKA has been in place since late July, and the BSP said it shall remain effective until LYKA properly registers as an OPS. The central bank likened an OPS to a flying license, saying a pilot must personally obtain such license to prove that they possess necessary skills and training to operate as an aircraft. The BSP said that Digital Spring's application on behalf of LYKA is like saying that an airline ticketing office can apply for a license on behalf of the pilot. Digitalization has been the name of the game even before the pandemic, but the health crisis boosted its acceleration even further. To find out how the country is adjusting so far, we have the president of the Philippine Software Industry Association, Jonathan De Luzuriaga. Good afternoon, Jonathan.
Good afternoon, Jess. Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to all our viewers.
All right, thank you for joining us. Well, first fear, of course, when many industries were forced to do remote setups, that digital was a primary concern. Has the gap been plugged or at least diminished?
Well, nobody was really ready for what transpired March 2020, right? So even the IT BPM sector, which includes software and animation, the contact centers, we were all scrambling to actually get our act together. But true enough, the resiliency of the IT BPM sector of the Republic of the Philippines actually brought us to where we are right now. And well, apparently, we are now being hailed as the pandemic-proof industry here in the Philippines, and we're also being hailed now as the economic vaccine. So it has been challenging for the first few months, but apparently now we're back to normal, and it's been quite 2021 for the entire industry.
So far, how's the growth of the sector been like for the first part of the year? I mean, year to date so far, what's the performance like of the sector?
Let me just state the 2020 numbers first, Jess. So we produced more than 20,000 jobs despite minimum movement and activities, and then we still
Mm-hmm.
produced about 26 billion US dollars for 2020. Now for
Mm-hmm.
2021, this is going to be a much more exciting storyline for the IT BPM industry because for the Philippine software industry, for instance, everyone's now registering or at least reporting double-digit growth. So, and that's going to continue all the way to 2022. There are
Mm-hmm.
several factors that contribute to this. Of course, there was a tremendous data explosion that happened because of
Of course.
work from home and then
Mm-hmm.
learn from home. And this now translates to various digital opportunities within the environment.
What level of growth are you looking at for the year, and are you looking to attain that?
So we are still looking at probably less than 2% for the
Mm-hmm.
entire sector. But the stretch goal for 2022, at least for software, we could reach as high as 5%.
Mm-hmm.
So those are, again, these are very positive numbers, but you must put into consideration also we are so used to double-digit growth for the past couple of years, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it has really taken its toll on the industry, but thankfully we are still up and up, and we're all very cautiously optimistic about what's going to happen to the entire IT BPM industry.
Okay, now let's zoom out a bit and talk about digitalization efforts in the country. How much have we managed to adapt, and how do we fare compared to our regional neighbors?
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank our support sectors. No, companies like Globe, for instance, have heavily invested in infrastructure because that's the only way that we could even talk about digital. Let's not even talk about digital if we're not going to be talking about connectivity, right? Now, as compared to our other Asian neighbors, we're still lagging behind, but it has been such a tremendous jump that practically the entire industry is giving our telco partners and other support sectors a two thumbs up. I guess it takes a pandemic to actually realize that we really need to be all connected.
Mm-hmm. Now, but also looking at the latest world digital ranking, you have the Philippines in terms of competitiveness, leaping to the 58th spot out of 64 economies. What does that decline say?
Especially on the local government front. There's a lot of applications that other country people will be looking into.
Mhm.
Integrators, software development shops are now in high demand. In fact, there's a very, very long list of jobs that are waiting for people who have digital skills. And organizations like LYKA, of course, are quite busy in terms of doing capability building initiatives. And I'd like to thank also Globe again once again for supporting some of the initiatives we have, such as the biggest technical
Mhm.
conference that's going to happen this month, which is so, and other what we call enablement seminars. Yes.
Competitiveness for the ICT sector and provide more jobs as well for our tech entrepreneurs, and how can the private sector help?
So first and foremost, the strength of the IT BPM industry here in the Philippines is really anchored on the Filipino talent. Now, that's our cost and also our business environment. So when we look at all of these foundations, we could say that we are going to remain relevant in the digital future. But again, it has to. I was once the head also of the National ICT Confederation of the Philippines. Yes, and one of the things we always say is we have to create magic. And magic actually stands for making academe, government, and industry collaborate. I think that's the secret to looking at the full potential of the Philippines to be a dominant player in the IT and IT BPM sector.
We got lots of optimism there, of course, for the ICT sector. Thank you very much, Jonathan de Luzuriaga, President of the Philippine Software Industry Association. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jess. Stay safe, please.
Those are the biggest stories this trading day, October 8, 2021. Catch Business World live again Monday next week at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We now turn you over to some live pictures over at Sofitel Plaza, where President Duterte has already arrived to endorse their senatorial slate over at PDP Laban.